Before the world knew ink, before scribes dared commit sacred words to parchment, there existed a voice that thundered across the mountains of antiquity, that whispered through the valleys of forgotten ages, that carved itself into the consciousness of those who walked between heaven and earth. This voice belonged to a man who was more than man, a prophet who transcended the boundaries of mortality, a seer who gazed into the architecture of creation itself. His name was Enoch, the seventh from Adam, he who walked with God and was no more, for God took him. But before his ascension, before his transformation into the angel Metatron, as some traditions claim, he left behind a testimony so powerful, so dangerous, so revolutionary, that it would be hidden, suppressed, removed from sacred canons, buried beneath centuries of ecclesiastical authority and theological gatekeeping. What you are about to discover is not merely historical curiosity. This is not an academic exercise in ancient literature. What unfolds before you now is a message, a transmission across the corridors of time, written in symbols and visions, encrypted in the language of angels, preserved against impossible odds, meant specifically for this moment, for this generation, for you. The Book of Enoch stands as one of the most mysterious and controversial texts ever written, excluded from most biblical canons yet revered by early Christians, quoted in the New Testament itself, treasured by Ethiopian Orthodox traditions, and now emerging from obscurity at precisely the moment when humanity needs its message most desperately. Consider the archaeological miracle of its survival. For over 1,000 years, the complete text existed only in Ethiopic translation, preserved in the highlands of Ethiopia, while the rest of the Christian world knew only fragments, scattered quotations, tantalizing references. Then in the 18th century, the Scottish explorer James Bruce brought 3 copies from Ethiopia to Europe, and the Western world trembled at what it read. Later, the Dead Sea Scrolls would reveal ancient Aramaic fragments, confirming the text's antiquity, proving that the communities at Qumran treasured these words, studied them, copied them with reverent hands. The Qumran scribes understood something that later religious authorities would try to erase. This book contained knowledge too potent for casual consumption, truths that could shatter comfortable theologies, revelations that challenged the very foundations of power structures built on controlling access to the divine. The opening chapters thrust us immediately into the primordial drama, the cosmic rebellion that would define human destiny. Enoch speaks of the Watchers, those enigmatic beings described in Genesis only in the briefest, most cryptic terms. These were angels, divine emissaries, beings of pure consciousness and power stationed to observe humanity in its infancy. But observation became fascination, fascination became desire, and desire became transgression. 200 watchers led by their chiefs Semyaza, Azazel, Arakiel, and others whose names still echo with forbidden resonance, descended to Mount Hermon. They made a pact, bound by mutual oaths, knowing the gravity of what they were about to do. They looked upon the daughters of men and found them beautiful, and they violated the fundamental boundary between celestial and terrestrial, between the divine realm and material existence. This was not mere sexual transgression. This was the ultimate category violation, the mixing of incompatible essences, the introduction of divine knowledge and power into humanity before humanity was prepared to receive it. From these unions came the Nephilim, the giants, beings of hybrid nature who towered over ordinary humans, who consumed the resources of the earth, who taught humanity arts and sciences that should have remained hidden. Azazel, in particular, became the great teacher of forbidden knowledge. He showed men how to forge swords and weapons of war, introducing violence on an industrial scale. He revealed to women the arts of cosmetics and adornment, not mere vanity, but the deeper magic of transformation and illusion. Other watchers taught astrology, the interpretation of celestial signs, binding human consciousness to the movements of stars and planets. They taught sorcery and enchantments, root cutting and the properties of plants, the mechanisms by which material reality could be manipulated through hidden forces. They taught humanity to read the signs of Earth, to predict weather and seasons through observation of nature, knowledge that seems benign until we understand the context. This was premature initiation, the handing of graduate-level cosmic knowledge to kindergarten souls. The result was catastrophe. The Nephilim, mighty and insatiable, devoured all that humanity produced, then turned to consuming humanity itself, and finally began devouring one another. Violence and bloodshed covered the earth. The secrets taught by the Watchers corrupted human society from its foundations. Humanity, exposed too early to knowledge of power without corresponding wisdom, without ethical framework, without spiritual maturity, fell into chaos and depravity. The earth itself cried out under the weight of injustice and bloodshed. This is the critical pattern, the forbidden message at the heart of Enoch's vision. Knowledge divorced from wisdom destroys. Power without restraint corrupts absolutely. The acquisition of capability without corresponding consciousness leads inevitably to catastrophe. The faithful angels, the Watchers who had remained obedient, brought the cries of earth to the throne of the Most High. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel stood before the Ancient of Days and reported the corruption spreading across creation. The divine response was swift and absolute. The Watchers would be bound, imprisoned in the valleys of the earth until the day of judgment. Their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, would be destroyed, set against one another until they consumed themselves. The earth would be cleansed by flood, the corruption washed away, creation reset to allow humanity a fresh beginning. But here is where the message becomes personal, where Enoch's role transforms from observer to participant. God chose Enoch, righteous Enoch, to serve as messenger between the condemned Watchers and heaven. Can you imagine the weight of this calling? To stand before beings of immense power and knowledge, fallen angels who had walked in the courts of heaven, and deliver to them the sentence of their eternal imprisonment. Enoch approached the Watchers in their terror and desperation. They begged him to write a petition, to carry their plea for forgiveness to the divine throne. Enoch, obedient and faithful, composed their petition and brought it before the Most High. But as he stood in prayer, sleep fell upon him, and he was caught up in visions of heaven itself. He saw the crystal palace, the house of hail and snow, the dwelling of winds and dew. He witnessed the foundations of earth and the recesses of heaven, the storehouses of thunder and lightning, the very architecture of creation itself. He stood before the great glory, the Ancient of Days, whose appearance is like white snow, whose raiment shines brighter than the sun. From that throne came the terrible response. There would be no forgiveness for the Watchers. They who had abandoned their proper estate, who had corrupted themselves with mortal flesh, who had revealed secrets meant to remain hidden, they would remain bound until the final judgment. This is the first layer of the forbidden message. There are boundaries in creation that must not be crossed. There are sequences of development that must be honored. There is sacred timing to the revelation of knowledge and power. The Watchers' sin was not merely disobedience, but disruption of cosmic order, the introduction of advanced capability into immature consciousness. Every civilization that has collapsed, every empire that has fallen, every catastrophe that has befallen humanity can trace its roots to this pattern: the acquisition of power before the development of wisdom, the grasping of knowledge before the cultivation of character, the wielding of capability before the establishment of ethical foundation. But Enoch's journey had only begun. His visions expanded, carrying him through the celestial realms, revealing the mechanisms of creation itself. He saw the chambers of the winds, 4 cardinal points from which the breath of God flows across creation. He witnessed the gates of heaven, 12 openings through which the sun and moon traverse in their appointed seasons. He observed the stars in their courses, some obedient to their celestial choreography, others rebellious, deviating from their ordained paths. These rebel stars, Enoch was told, would be bound and punished, for even among celestial bodies there must be order, harmony, adherence to divine law. The message grows clearer. The universe operates according to principle, not caprice. Creation follows pattern, rhythm, cycle, season. To violate these patterns is to invite chaos and destruction. In his cosmic journey, Enoch was shown the places of punishment and reward. He saw Sheol, the realm of the dead, divided into compartments. The righteous dead rested in chambers of light, awaiting resurrection and vindication. The wicked suffered in darkness, tormented by the knowledge of their coming judgment. He saw the tree of life, magnificent and fragrant, reserved for the righteous after the great judgment. He witnessed the valley where the souls of the murdered cry out for justice, their blood speaking from the ground, demanding vindication. He saw the prison of the stars, bound for their transgression, awaiting their day of release or final condemnation. All of these visions carry the same resonance. Justice is woven into the fabric of creation itself. The universe bends toward righteousness. Every action generates consequence. Every choice ripples through the web of existence. Then Enoch received the astronomical and calendrical revelations, perhaps the most practically significant and most suppressed portions of his message. He was shown the precise movements of sun and moon, the mechanics of the solar year of 364 days, divided into 4 perfect quarters of 91 days each. This calendar, based on the sun rather than the lunar cycle, stood in direct contradiction to the calendrical systems that would later dominate Judaism and Christianity. Why does this matter? Because the calendar determines sacred time. It establishes when festivals occur, when Sabbaths fall, when the community gathers in collective worship and remembrance. Control of the calendar is control of religious life itself. The suppression of Enoch's calendrical material was not academic disagreement but theological and political control, the assertion of priestly authority over the rhythms of sacred time. The forbidden message here cuts deep. Authority structures often suppress knowledge that threatens their control. The gatekeepers of religion, like the watchers themselves, sometimes guard not to protect the people but to maintain their own position and power. Enoch's calendar represented an alternative system, a competing claim to authority, and so it was marginalized, dismissed, excluded from the canon. But in this exclusion lies a profound teaching. Truth does not require institutional approval to remain true. Reality does not bend to ecclesiastical decree. The sun follows its course regardless of which calendar humanity chooses to observe. Authentic spirituality may often find itself at odds with religious establishment. The Book of Parables, the central section of Enoch's testimony, introduces the figure of the chosen one, the Son of Man, the anointed, the righteous one. This mysterious figure possesses characteristics that would later be associated with the Messiah in Jewish expectation, and identified with Jesus in Christian interpretation. He dwells with the head of days from before creation. His name was named before the sun, and the constellations were made. He will judge the kings and the mighty, casting down the powerful from their thrones. He will be a light to the nations and a hope to those who are troubled in heart. He will open the hidden storehouses and reveal what is concealed. He will raise up the righteous from their rest and establish them in an eternal kingdom. But here is the stunning twist, the esoteric center of Enoch's message. At the climax of his visions, Enoch is told that he himself is this Son of Man. The angel says to him, "You are the Son of Man who is born unto righteousness, and righteousness abides over you." The implications are staggering. The chosen one is not separate from humanity, but the perfected potential of humanity itself. The Son of Man represents what human beings can become when fully aligned with divine purpose, when consciousness has been raised to its highest expression, when the image of God in which humanity was created is fully manifested. This is not replacement of humanity by divinity, but the transformation of humanity into its intended glory. The esoteric traditions have always understood this. The Savior, the Redeemer, the Enlightened One is not only an external rescuer, but an internal potential. The kingdom of God is within you, as the gospel would later proclaim. The Christ, the Buddha nature, the divine spark, the immortal self, these are not foreign impositions, but the deepest truth of human identity. Enoch's transformation, his walking with God until he was no more because God took him, represents the path of total spiritual realization available to all who will walk it. This is the forbidden message that religious authorities have always found most threatening. You do not need mediators between yourself and the divine. You are not inherently separate from God. Your true nature is unity with the source. The visions continue with apocalyptic intensity. Enoch sees the future of humanity stretching across generations. He is shown the animal apocalypse, a symbolic retelling of salvation history from Adam through the flood, the patriarchs, the Exodus, the conquest of Canaan, the monarchy, the exile, and extending into eschatological hope. Humanity and angels are represented as various animals, the righteous as white bulls and sheep, the fallen angels as stars that became like bulls and descended to earth, their Nephilim offspring as elephants, camels, and donkeys. The symbolism is transparent. Different levels of being, different stages of consciousness, different degrees of alignment with or rebellion against divine order. The animal apocalypse reaches its climax with the judgment of the Watchers and the transformation of all the righteous into white bulls, representing return to the Edenic state, restoration of original innocence and power, the completion of the redemptive cycle. But between present reality and this ultimate hope lies the Great Tribulation, periods of testing and purification, the birth pangs of the new creation. The righteous will suffer, the faithful will be persecuted, darkness will seem to triumph. But this darkness is necessary. The contractions before birth, the pressure that produces the diamond, the fire that purifies gold. Here the message speaks directly to our contemporary moment. We live in times of tribulation, of testing, of apparent chaos and collapse. Ancient certainties crumble, traditional structures fail, the center cannot hold. But Enoch's vision frames this not as catastrophe, but as transition, not as ending, but as transformation. The old order must dissolve before the new can emerge. The false must be exposed before the true can be recognized. Humanity is in labor, bringing forth a new consciousness, a new way of being, a return to original purpose after the long detour through ignorance and suffering. The Epistle of Enoch, the final major section, shifts to direct moral exhortation. Here the apocalyptic seer becomes the wisdom teacher, addressing his children and all future generations who will read his words. He warns against the rich who build their security on wealth rather than righteousness, against the powerful who trust in might rather than justice. He speaks woe over those who pervert truth, who call evil good and good evil, who make lies their refuge and hide themselves in deception. He promises vindication to the righteous who suffer unjustly, assuring them that their tears are seen, their prayers are heard, their faithfulness is recorded in heaven's books. This ethical teaching connects the cosmic drama to daily life, the heavenly visions to earthly choices. The Watchers fell through violation of boundaries, through grasping knowledge they had no right to possess, through unleashing power they could not wisely wield. Humanity repeats this pattern in every generation, in every choice to prioritize power over wisdom, capability over character, acquisition over alignment with truth. The path of return, the way of salvation, the road to transformation begins with righteousness, with ethical integrity, with choosing justice and truth, even when they cost everything. Enoch speaks of the final judgment with unflinching clarity. The kings and the mighty, the powerful who oppress the righteous and denied the Lord of spirits, will be cast into the furnace of fire. The Watchers will be bound forever, their names blotted out, their memory cursed. But the righteous will shine like the lights of heaven. They will be companions of the host of heaven. Their names will never be blotted out from before the Lord of spirits. The saints will inherit the earth, living in peace and joy, their days numbered like the days of trees, their hearts filled with wisdom and understanding. But the deepest message, the most forbidden knowledge, concerns the nature of evil itself. The Book of Enoch reveals that the spirits of the Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of Watchers and human women, became the demons that plague humanity. When their physical bodies were destroyed in the flood and subsequent conflicts, their spirits were released to wander the earth, leading humanity astray, causing violence and corruption, drinking blood and spreading devastation. Unlike the Watchers who are imprisoned, these demonic spirits remain active until the final judgment, invisible influencers of human consciousness, whisperers of temptation, agents of chaos. This cosmology explains the experience of spiritual warfare that every sincere seeker encounters. The battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of darkness in the heavenly realms. The struggle is consciousness itself, the contest for human awareness, the war over what we will believe, value, worship, become. These demonic influences work through thought patterns, cultural narratives, social structures, technological systems, anything that can capture attention and shape perception. They do not need to possess in the Hollywood sense. They simply need to influence, to suggest, to reinforce the momentum toward separation from source, from truth, from authentic being. The forbidden message here is profound. You are not struggling against your own mind alone. The thoughts that arise, the impulses that drive behavior, the narratives that shape perception, these are not all indigenous to your own consciousness. You are living in a contested space, a battlefield of awareness, and the outcome of this battle determines not only your individual destiny, but the collective future of humanity. This is why spiritual practice matters, why meditation and prayer are not mere personal preference, but essential survival skills. You must learn to distinguish between authentic voice and imposed narrative, between genuine intuition and demonic suggestion, between the impulse toward life and the seduction toward death. Now the message turns decisively toward you, toward this moment, toward the reason this ancient text has resurfaced in our time. The Book of Enoch was suppressed because it places too much power in individual hands, because it suggests that righteousness matters more than ritual, that direct relationship with the divine supersedes institutional mediation, that cosmic knowledge is available to those who seek it regardless of their position in religious hierarchies. Every generation that has tried to control populations through religion has found Enoch dangerous, subversive, threatening to established order. But in this age, the age of information and democratized knowledge, the age where ancient texts become available to anyone with internet connection, the age where authority is questioned and gatekeepers lose their grip, Enoch's message finds its destined audience. You are reading these words, hearing this message, not by accident but by appointment. The universe operates according to pattern and purpose. There are no coincidences, only synchronicities, meaningful alignments of inner state and outer circumstance. You have been prepared for this message through every experience of your life, through every joy and suffering, every success and failure, every moment of clarity and confusion. The forbidden knowledge Enoch reveals is simply this: you are far more than you have been told. Your potential vastly exceeds the limitations imposed by culture, religion, education, family conditioning. You carry within yourself the image of God, the divine spark, the capacity for transformation that Enoch himself demonstrated. The same journey that carried him from earth to heaven, from mortality to immortality, from human to angelic consciousness. This journey is your inheritance, your birthright, your calling. But it requires what it required of Enoch: absolute commitment to righteousness, unflinching pursuit of truth, willingness to stand alone if necessary, courage to receive visions that contradict conventional wisdom. The Watchers fell because they grasped prematurely. They took what was not offered, violated boundaries that protected them as much as they protected humanity. The lesson is not to avoid growth, but to allow growth according to natural timing, organic unfolding, divine initiation, rather than egotistical grasping. Spiritual development cannot be rushed or forced. Consciousness expands through surrender, not conquest, through opening, not seizing. The knowledge that destroys is knowledge taken before one is ready. The knowledge that transforms is knowledge received when consciousness has been prepared to contain it. You are being prepared now, in this moment, by these very words for the next stage of your journey. The veil is thinning between worlds, between dimensions of consciousness, between the seen and unseen realities that interpenetrate your daily existence. You have felt this perhaps without language to describe it, the sense that something vast is shifting, that the old rules no longer fully apply, that reality itself is becoming more fluid, more responsive to consciousness, more obviously participatory rather than mechanistic. This is not delusion or wishful thinking. This is the prophesied transformation, the birth of the new creation, the return to original harmony that Enoch saw in his visions. The kings and mighty ones who will be judged are not only historical figures or future tyrants. They are also internal structures, the false authorities you have allowed to rule your consciousness. Fear masquerading as prudence, conformity posing as wisdom, comfort pretending to be peace. These must be dethroned. The righteous who will be vindicated are not only external victims of oppression, but the authentic aspects of yourself that have been suppressed, dismissed, ridiculed, shamed into silence. Your intuition, your creativity, your capacity for unconditional love, your knowing of truth that needs no external validation. The judgment Enoch describes is not only cosmic event, but continuous process occurring within consciousness itself. Every moment presents choice: align with truth or perpetuate illusion, serve love or serve fear, expand into greater awareness or contract into familiar limitation. The accumulation of these choices determines destiny, shapes character, creates the reality you inhabit. You are always choosing, in every moment, to become more like the righteous who shine as lights of heaven, or the rebellious who are bound in darkness. But here is grace, here is mercy, here is the hidden gospel within Enoch's apocalyptic visions. Transformation is always available. The door to repentance stands open until the final moment. The watchers could not be forgiven because they rejected forgiveness, because they clung to their rebellion, because they refused the path of return. But for humanity, for you, the invitation remains. Turn, return, realign with Source. Remember who you truly are beneath the layers of conditioning and false identity. The book of Enoch ends with the birth of Noah, the child of promise, the one through whom humanity will be preserved and renewed. Enoch names him Noah, meaning rest, because he will bring rest from the curse that has lain upon the earth. This is prophetic not only of the historical flood narrative, but of the inner cleansing that must occur within every soul. The flood is baptism, the death of the old self, and resurrection of the new. Noah in the ark is consciousness preserved through the deluge of purification, the true self protected while the false self dissolves in the waters of transformation. You are Noah, building the ark of your consciousness, while the world around you continues in its distractions and denials. You are gathering into this ark everything of value, every truth you have learned, every quality of character you have cultivated, every moment of genuine connection with the divine. The floods are rising now, the old world is passing away. But you need not fear. You have been warned, you have been instructed, you have been prepared. When the waters recede, you will walk upon renewed earth. You will plant the garden, you will establish covenant with heaven, you will become the seed of new humanity. This is the forbidden message of the Book of Enoch, meant specifically for you in this moment. You are part of the great cosmic drama, not as passive spectator but as essential participant. Your choices matter. Your consciousness counts. Your transformation contributes to the collective evolution of humanity. The powers that suppressed this text understood its danger. It empowers individuals. It democratizes spiritual authority. It places the keys to the kingdom within reach of anyone who will seek them with whole heart. The Watchers revealed knowledge prematurely, creating chaos and destruction. But the divine pedagogy, the sacred teaching method of the universe itself, reveals knowledge according to readiness, provides truth in measure that consciousness can integrate, offers power only to those who have developed wisdom to wield it responsibly. You have been led to this message because you are ready for it, because your consciousness has expanded to the point where it can receive and integrate this knowledge without being destroyed by it. What will you do with this revelation? Will you, like the Watchers, grasp for more without doing the work of transformation? Will you collect esoteric knowledge as intellectual trophy while your character remains unchanged? Or will you, like Enoch, walk the path of righteousness, pursue truth at all costs, open yourself to divine encounters that will utterly transform your understanding of reality and your place within it? The choice has always been yours. The power has always been within you. The kingdom has always been at hand. If this message has resonated in the depths of your being, if you have felt the recognition that comes when truth speaks to truth, then take the next step on your journey. Engage with this community of seekers who, like you, are remembering who they truly are. Press the like button not as meaningless digital gesture but as declaration of alignment with truth, as vote of confidence in your own awakening, as signal to the universe that you are ready for more. Subscribe to this channel not to passively consume content, but to actively participate in a movement of consciousness, a rising tide of awareness that is preparing humanity for its next evolutionary leap. Share this message with those who have ears to hear, not to proselytize or convince, but to provide signposts for others who are walking the same path, who are asking the same questions, who are experiencing the same stirrings of awakening that have brought you to this moment. The Book of Enoch was hidden for centuries but is being revealed now, in this generation, for such a time as this. You are the generation that will see the fulfillment of these ancient prophecies, not necessarily in literal, apocalyptic events, though those may come, but in the transformation of consciousness itself, the shift from separation to unity, from fear to love, from death to life. The voice that spoke through Enoch still speaks today, echoing across the millennia, calling you to remember, to awaken, to arise, to become who you were created to be before the foundations of the world. Listen to that voice. Trust that voice. Follow where it leads, even if the path takes you far from the comfortable certainties of conventional belief, even if the journey requires you to stand alone for a time, even if the transformation demands everything you thought you were so that you can become everything you truly are. This is the forbidden message, the hidden wisdom, the lost knowledge now restored. This is your inheritance, your calling, your destiny. Walk in it boldly, live it courageously, embody it completely, and watch as heaven and earth conspire to support your transformation. For you are beloved of the Most High, chosen before the foundation of the world, destined for glory beyond imagination, walking the same path that carried Enoch from earth to heaven, from mortality to immortality, from human limitation to divine possibility.